Hello everybody, I'm Chris Barkle, and welcome back to another episode of Chris Barkle's Album Club. As usual, of course, today we will be listening to two randomly chosen albums from off the list, and we'll be listening to them, I guess. Alright, today with me I have Ben.
I have a girlfriend that's been on the night.
Matthew.
She's got the smoke in her eyes. She's coming up, going right through my eyes.
And Van. Okay. Y'all ready to hear what today's albums are?
Okay, sure.
Very unenthused, but okay. Today's albums are Halt Like a Will by Linda Ronstadt and But Here We Are by Foo Fighters. Kind of a strange pairing. I'm not exactly sure how this came about, but we're going to first impressions, and we're starting with you, Ben.
Um, I know who Lena Ronstadt is. I know some of her songs. I'm sorry sorted for friends of the podcast and guest, but I don't really know the specific album. But Here We Are by Foo Fighters. I may know songs off of it. I don't know, but I don't recognize the title right now.
Matthew.
I've heard of But Here We Are Now. But Here We Are, which is the latest Foo Fighters album, and famously, it was the one that was made after Taylor Hawking passed away. That's that. On the other album, I have not listened to that album, so we'll see how that one goes.
I will briefly correct Matthew, though his name is Taylor Hawkins, not Taylor Hawking. Van, it's your turn.
I've heard of Linda Ronstadt twice. I don't know anything about her. She looks very pretty in this 1976 picture on the Wikipedia page, and that is the extent of my knowledge of her. Literally nothing else. Foo Fighters are okay. Everlong is an awful song. Other than that, good band.
Boy, you did not just say Everlong's an awful song.
As a Foo Fighters,
I hate that song. I hate that song, and I have never liked it. From the first time I heard it, I don't care how popular it is. I don't like it. I don't. That opening riff just annoys me to no end.
Also, I will say, it's generally my goal to try to evaluate female musicians on the strength of their music, not on their looks. Just saying.
I am just making it. That's all I know. I don't know the strength of the music.
Yeah, well, we'll find out, won't we?
I was gonna say, as a Foo Fighters song, there is 4 or 5 go-to songs that I go to for Foo Fighters, and none of them are Everlong. I'll say that. I think Everlong is fine, but I just like The Deepest Blues Are Black, My Hero, Best of You, and my personal favorite Foo Fighters song, Aurora.
Hell yeah.
More than Everlong. Yeah.
I guess it's my turn. Yeah, I've not heard anything off of the most recent Foo Fighters album, but Here We Are, that's one we're going to be doing. But I am, of course, kind of familiar with its existence and it being the most recent Foo Fighters album, as well as, it's my understanding, kind of a tribute to Taylor Hawkins. So, I have heard several Foo Fighters albums before, mostly up through some point in the mid-2000s. I think the last one I've listened to all the way through is some, 07? It's the one with the Pretend on it. I listened to that one. I can't remember its name, but I've listened to all of them through that one. So it'll be interesting to hear this one. As for Linda Ronstadt, I am on the record about my opinions of Linda Ronstadt. I think in the past, I think some of her songs, especially her hits, just really aren't all that great. I think she can sing well, but I think her material is oftentimes rather lacking. And there are some exemptions, of course. There have been times she's sung some songs that I like, but oftentimes it feels like she just sings kind of mopey breakup songs, and that's just, I don't know, they just always seem to have kind of weak lyrics to me. But maybe my opinion will change after listening to this album. We'll just have to see. We're gonna go listen to these albums now. Alright, we are back and we have listened to the albums. And as usual, we are going to start with the first album, which was Heart Like a Will by Linda Ronstadt. And Ben, you're up first.
Thank you. So this album starts with the song "You're No Good," which I'm quite familiar with as a classic song from the 70s. Then the next couple of songs, it doesn't matter anymore. Faithless Love, I wasn't that enchanted by it, and I was kind of like, this album's not all that great. But then starting with The Dark End of the Street and Hold Like a Will, and then the second side of this album were actually pretty good. The final track, You Could Close Your Eyes, is by James Taylor. And I also thought Keep Me From Blowing Away of a Christian sounding song, which is, I'm sure, an inspiration to Matthew. I think was really good, but I really thought The Dark End of the Street, Hold Like a Will, and especially When Will I Be Loved, or strong tracks. Is this like the best album I've listened to on the album club? No. But this album was better than I thought it was going to be. So I liked it.
Matthew.
I quite enjoyed this album. I was quite surprised how much I liked it. A couple tracks I liked. I actually liked, I think, the vast majority of this album. I really like You're No Good, It Doesn't Matter Anymore, Faithless Love, I Can't Help It If I'm Still in Love with You, You Can Close Your Eyes, When Will I Be Loved. And honestly, I was quite impressed by this album. It was great vocals, very good, like, country rock, as this album would be considered. All around, it was a good time. I had a good time listening to this.
Van.
So, despite knowing nothing about Linda Ronstadt before this, I was very impressed by this album. You Know Good was great. I mean, Willin' was a shock, a nice surprise to hear, because I'm a big Little Feat fan. So hearing that was like, whoa, okay, I know this one. That was fun. This album was really great. It's like, especially the like acoustic songs. They were like a nice warm blanket. It's a very comfy album. It's a very cozy album. It's like, it'd be like perfect for like Sunday morning in November at like 10 a.m. is like the perfect time to listen to this album. Especially because I'm from Western New York, so typically like colder on there. So this album very much felt like a blanket. It was very warm, very cozy. Really like this a lot. Definitely recommend it.
Alright, well, as for me, as I said at the beginning of this video, I knew some Linda Ronstadt's bigger hits. I knew You're No Good and When Will I Be Loved. Those were the two songs from this that I think I had heard before. But I said at the beginning of this video, I'm generally of the opinion that Linda Ronstadt is overrated and mid. I think she can sing. I think generally, though, she doesn't have the best material. And oddly enough, listening to this hasn't changed my opinion at all. Usually when I listen to one of these albums by an artist I haven't heard before, it at least changes my opinion a bit. Like for instance, Kiss, I kind of like mildly disliked, and then like after listening to the album, I really hated it. With this, I didn't have any change in opinion. It was just like, yeah, I still think she can sing. I think these songs are well produced, but I don't really think any of these are like that great of songs. They're just kind of mid. The material's just not great. You know, the best Linda Ronstadt songs are usually songs she does with other people, from collaborations with like Neil Young, Paul Simon, or the Rolling Stones. So, like, for instance, shout out to Linda Ronstadt's cover of Tumbling Dice, which is not from this album, but actually had the lyrics actually slightly tweaked by Keith Richards and Mick Jagger. That's an example of her singing a good song that was altered for her by the original writers. None of these songs, I wasn't blown away by any of these. You're No Good sounds like just kind of a typical kind of just single from the 70s. It's the best song on here, I would say, but even then, it's at best, I think, probably a, I don't know, 6 out of 10. When Will I Be Loved, I think of as kind of a overly sappy song, personally. Um, it's just, like, she can sing well enough, but she needs better material now. None of these songs are actually written by her, so, I mean, I can't take a dig at her veil. I doubt she was probably the person picking out most of these songs either. I'm assuming it was probably a producer or probably the label, so I can't really diss her veil. But I didn't really like any of these songs. In my opinion, it's just the same as it's always been. She can sing well, but she has to have a good song to be able to sing. She can't really elevate anything that's mid or below average to any sort of great quality if it's just not there on the song. Alright, moving on. The next album was But Here We Are by Foo Fighters. Ben, But Here We Are. This is how you remind me of Arms Wide Open. Ben, what are your thoughts on But Here We Are?
This is how you remind me
With Arms Wide Open.
of. But can you take me higher?
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, that is true. But Here We Are is actually a pretty dark album. This is how you remind me as a song. It's kind of pissed. I don't know what else to say. I think it tries to be dark over it, actually. Before Wide Open does have some darkness in it. So, the album, But Here We Are, is a really good album, I thought. I will say that a lot of the songs, to me, ended up bleeding together, which is often a bad thing. Makes a whole lot to talk about. But I thought it was a really good album. There was this kind of sense of trying to process Taylor Hawkins' loss through the idea that, you know what, can we let Matthew talk and then I'll come back?
Matthew.
I thought this was a really good album, and I thought this for a while. Like, I kind of thought this when I listened to this for the first time about a year ago, or like when the album came out in 2023, that this was Foo Fighters' best album. I'm a big time Foo Fighters fan, but like their albums aren't like, oh my god, this is like as great as Abbey Road or Wish You Were Here or some other track, like other albums like Led Zeppelin 4 or anything. But they're like a decent time. While this album definitely has like the depth of like their best work. Obviously, this was made after the tragic death of Taylor Hawkins, and obviously, like they could have chose to like not make an album, like end Foo Fighters then and there after their last album, Medicine at Midnight, but they choose to do But Here We Are as like essentially like a therapy album, essentially like basically them processing how they can continue without a friend of theirs. They've been doing it for over 20 years. And I think, there are a lot of great tracks here. I like Rescue. I like the title track. I like Nothing at All. And I actually think the best tracks of the albums are The Teacher and Rest, where I feel like Rest is a very emotionally charged song. It's very much kind of like them saying goodbye to Taylor, in a way. So I think it's a very powerful album, well done, really good production, and yeah, that's this is a really good album, and that's all I'll say.
Van.
I enjoyed this album. This was a fun listen. I mean, maybe not the most fun listen the album, but it was a good listen. Very much heartfelt music, solid rock tunes, as you would expect from the Foo Fighters. I had never been the biggest Foo Fighters fan, but listening to this album made me want to check out more of the discography. I've heard probably about 10, 15 songs. Just from being a fan of rock music, you're inevitably going to hear a good amount of Foo Fighters music. So I've definitely heard quite a few, but never listened to a whole album until this one. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I think The Teacher deserves a mention. A lot of times whenever a hard rock band or like a non-prog band makes a 10-minute kind of multi-part song, it isn't typically great. But I thought this one they delivered. I think it was a good call, and I really enjoyed that one. I wanted to give a special shout out to that. As a big prog guy, I think they did a good job on that one. Specifically, I liked Under You a lot. Definitely a great tune. It's a really solid album. Liked it a lot.
All right, now we'll get back to you, Ben, after me. But I do want to speak here. Help take a bit of a load off of you, although I think Matthew and Fan both did a good job at that. I really quite like this one. I think Rescued in particular is a great album opener, but of course the real highlight of this is, now there were great tracks all in between. I mean, there wasn't anything on this like it's sort of really like a bad song, a dud, or anything. Very consistent. That's something the Foos look good at. But the real highlight is, of course, the ending, The Teacher on West, which, although they'll split up as different tracks, I'd argue that they're probably best listened to together. They kind of flow, I think, thematically well into each other, in a way. West, in particular, I think is a very good, very strong album closer. It's a very sad song, very sad album, of course, as Matthew's already gone into. But I think that in some ways, West ends at least a little bit on kind of a happier note. At least it does kind of have a more positive outlook on death than maybe I was expecting. You can rest now. It's not just like, oh, well, died or whatever. It is kind of a positive outlook on that, and I think that that's a good note to have ended the album, this chapter of their career, all that on. And it just really helps, I think, bookend the album nicely, especially since the opening song is, rescued, I need to be rescued, whatever, and then the ending song is like, you can rest now, and it's fine, and maybe death isn't the most awful thing, and it isn't, horrible, and it doesn't have to be completely sad, that, I think, really helps thematically tie the album together. Alright, Ben, well, back to you. I might say something more if I have something to say about what you said, but otherwise, we'll back to you.
Anyway, all I have to say, I think Chris, you and Matthew and Fan really, all three did a good job of summarizing a lot of my thoughts. The thought I got stuck on was kind of this idea of the way it flows from Rescue. It's a very emotional song to this idea that Taylor Hawkins could be West now. My brain got caught emotionally on this idea. It broke. But I think in some ways that is how this album flows, right? It's this idea that, in some ways, Dave Grohl had rescued Taylor Hawkins before, and in some ways Taylor Hawkins had rescued Dave Grohl. Right? Dave Grohl comes into the Foo Fighters already having his first band blow up, become massive, and then have its lead singer kill himself. And it's... Taylor Hawkins is not on their first album of the Foo Fighters, right? But Taylor Hawkins kind of ends up being a kind of mentee. The song is the long song on his The Teacher. Dave Grohl is the teacher. The Taylor Hawkins, his new drummer. He's the drummer of Nirvana. But in some ways, it's the band and Taylor Hawkins as the mentee, all providing stability for somebody whose career had been quite unstable, and tried to
capture that snap of Taylor Hawkins is dead is difficult. I think successfully done in this album, but it ends up being complicated, and I'm having trouble expressing that. I think that this is a really good album for capturing that. But trying to distill it is difficult.
And in some ways, I will say, Ben, it's not just though that the teacher is about Dave Grohl being the teacher. The teacher is also to some degree about, I think, Taylor Hawkins being the teacher and kind of teaching Dave Grohl in a way to move on again and live a bit, after the loss of Kurt Cobain and stuff. But yeah, I think it's partly that in some ways Dave Grohl, he was the more senior kind of rock musician in terms of having been around, and he was kind of the teacher to Taylor Hawkins, but it's like Taylor Hawkins also taught Dave Grohl like something about life and, living. Alright, if that's all for now, but here we are, we're going to, of course, go on to which album we liked better. Ben, we're going to start with you.
I liked But Here We Are better, even if I wasn't able to explicate it as well as I was with Hold Like a Will album.
Matthew.
I'm picking But Here We Are. I think the album is a very good album, but I think that Here We Are is just more like it has more meat to the bone, and essentially like dealing with the tragedy of losing your loved one to like a tragic death is like in part of that, in understanding it.
Fan.
I'm picking Heart Like a Wheel to win this one for me.
Oh, I didn't. Last off, it was me. Now, obviously, you all, I'm sure, know that I didn't really care that much for the first album. But even if I did, even if it was an album I really liked, But Here We Are is, of course, a very, very loaded album. It's a very deep album. It's very emotionally layered in terms of its lyrical and emotional content. And it's just, when you look at something like that, that's going to win most matchups. It's maybe not every one, but it's going to win. It could win against, I think, a much stronger album than what's up against here, at least in my opinion. And in my opinion, yeah, it definitely wins up against this album, Hold Like a Wheel. So I'm picking But Here We Are. Alright, now on to who picked what albums. Does anyone want to take a guess as to who picked which album?
Chris picked the Linda album.
Okay. Matthew is indeed correct. I did pick the Linda Ronstadt album. I was hoping this would give me a somewhat better impression of Linda Ronstadt, or at least help me discover like better album tracks. If I found maybe better than her hits, but as I said, didn't really work, although I at least didn't come out of it hating her either. As for But Here We Are, that was picked by Matthew, which you could probably guess based partly off of him saying that he had listened to it before and been, like, whoa. Alright, well, that's about it for another great episode. Please be sure to like and subscribe. I do want to remind you to do that because people often forget. It does help us all here out a lot, especially for these sorts of videos. And once again, thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.